On December 7, 1941, at precisely 7:57 a.m., Doris Miller, a mess attendant second class, was attending to laundry duties on the third deck of the USS West Virginia, positioned at Battleship Row in Pearl Harbor, territory of Hawaii. Miller, then 22 years old, performed his duties below deck, which involved collecting laundry, polishing shoes, cleaning tables, and serving meals. In the racially segregated Navy of 1941, African American sailors were restricted to menial tasks, barred from combat roles and gunnery training. The USS West Virginia, designated BB-48, was a majestic Colorado-class battleship with a displacement of 32,600 tons and a length of 624 feet, manned by a crew of 1,080 individuals. It lay moored at Battleship Row, alongside the USS Tennessee at berth F6, resting in 40 feet of water below its keel. Suddenly, an explosion ripped through the air. A Japanese Type 91 aerial torpedo struck the port side, followed by a torrent of 6 more torpedoes and 2 16-inch armor-piercing bombs. The vessel shuddered violently, listing as water surged in, fires ignited, and smoke billowed. Oil spilled everywhere. Miller's assigned anti-aircraft battle station was obliterated by the initial torpedo. The captain, mortally wounded by shrapnel, lay dying on the bridge, his abdomen torn open. The ship began to sink, settling onto the harbor floor as flames spread and burning oil engulfed the water. Men screamed, drowning, burning, and perishing. Instead of retreating, Miller pressed forward, toward danger, toward death, toward duty. He ascended to the bridge, then to the guns, ready to engage the enemy. Untrained and unauthorized, it mattered not. The ship was sinking. He fired. To witness the transformation of a mere mess attendant into a revered war hero, kindly click the like button and subscribe for authentic historical narratives from real WW2. Now, let us return to Miller's story. Doris Miller was born on October 12, 1919, in Waco, McLennan County, Central Texas, to Connery and Henrietta Miller. His family was impoverished, African American, and rooted in the rural South with a farming background. His father toiled as a sharecropper, while his mother managed the household, taking on domestic work, laundry, and cleaning to make ends meet. Hard times and poverty were the norm. Everyone struggled, and the impending depression would exacerbate their hardships. The fourth of 4 sons, Doris grew up in a large extended family, surrounded by brothers, cousins, aunts, uncles, and grandparents, all living in the close-knit, segregated African American community of Waco. Jim Crow laws in Texas legally enforce separation, dictating separate schools, facilities, and nearly every aspect of life. This harsh reality was endured and survived. Doris attended Moore High School in Waco, a segregated and underfunded black school, yet it functioned with dedicated teachers and capable students. Although limited, an education was available. His name, Doris, has an unusual origin. The midwife attending his birth anticipated a girl and had prepared a girl's name. When a boy arrived, the family kept the name. Though uncommon for a boy in 1919 Texas, it became his permanent, legal, and official designation. While some sources suggest he was nicknamed Dory by shipmates and friends, his official birth certificate and Navy records consistently state Doris. His childhood was a typical poor, rural Southern black experience of the 1920s and 1930s. Doris started working at a young age, assisting his family with farm labor and manual tasks, contributing whatever was needed. He was a strong, athletic boy who played football in high school as a powerful and fast running back and fullback. He also worked outside of school to supplement the family's income, a necessity for their survival. Details of his high school graduation remain unclear. Some accounts say he graduated, others that he left early due to economic necessity. Regardless, his formal education ended young, and he commenced full-time work in various labor-intensive jobs, whatever was available in Waco, Texas in the 1930s. For a black man, options were severely limited. Dead-end jobs, low pay, no future, merely survival. In 1939, a pivotal decision arose: to seek change, something different, something better. The military presented an option. The United States Navy was expanding, responding to the escalating war clouds in Europe and Asia, with Japan and Germany exhibiting aggressive expansionism. America, while preparing quietly, increased military and Navy recruitment, somewhat relaxing standards. Black men were permitted, though restricted, to specific roles: mess attendant, steward, cooking, cleaning, and serving white officers and sailors. Nothing else was available. Racial segregation was official policy, legally enforced everywhere, and the military was no exception, perhaps even stricter. Yet, it offered a steady job, stable pay, food, shelter, clothing, training, travel, and adventure. A better prospect than Waco, better than nothing, better than anything else available to a young, uneducated, poor black man in Texas in 1939. The Navy seemed the best, perhaps only, choice. On September 16, 1939, Doris Miller enlisted in the United States Navy at the Naval Recruiting Station in Dallas, Texas, just a month shy of his 20th birthday. He signed a 6-year standard contract with the rating of Mess Attendant 3rd Class, the lowest rating and the only service category open to black sailors. He raised his hand, took the oath, and became a sailor, officially and legally bound to the U.S. Navy for at least the next 6 years. He was transported to Norfolk, Virginia for boot camp and basic training. This recruit training was standard for all sailors, regardless of race, though units were largely segregated. The training involved marching, drilling, physical conditioning, swimming, seamanship, naval procedures, and regulations, all fundamental aspects of becoming a U.S. Navy sailor. Miller performed adequately. He was not exceptional, nor was he poor, but rather average, capable, reliable, and dutiful. A good sailor with potential. Upon completing training, he received orders to the USS Pyro, an ammunition ship and support vessel, his first posting. This initiated him into fleet life, Navy realities, and the adaptation required to truly become a sailor. In January 1940, Miller received new orders and was transferred to a larger, more prestigious vessel, the USS West Virginia, BB-48, a Colorado-class battleship commissioned on December 1, 1923. Its specifications were impressive: a full load displacement of 32,600 tons, an overall length of 624 feet, a beam of 97 feet 4 inches, and a maximum draft of 31 feet 4 inches. Its armament was formidable, featuring a main battery of 8 16-inch 45 caliber guns in 4 twin turrets, 2 forward, 2 aft. A secondary battery of 14 5-inch 51 caliber guns in casemates, and 4 3-inch 50 caliber anti-aircraft guns. It also housed 2 21-inch submerged torpedo tubes for broadsides. The armor was exceptionally heavy: a 13.5-inch maximum thickness belt, 18-inch turret faces, 13-inch barbettes, a 3.5-inch plus 1.5-inch deck, and a 16-inch conning tower. This heavily protected armored fortress was a floating testament to power, danger, and deadliness, a source of pride for the Pacific Fleet and the backbone of the Navy. The ship's assignment to Pearl Harbor, Hawaii Territory, was strategically critical. The growing Japanese threat in the Pacific was concerning, and preparations for a possible, even probable, war were intensifying. The West Virginia was combat-ready, manned by a professional crew of 1,080 officers and men. Navy standards were high, discipline strict, tradition strong, and pride immense in this formidable ship and the Navy as a whole. Miller's role remained that of a mess attendant, though he had been promoted once since enlisting in 1939, now holding the rating of MA2. His modest monthly pay was approximately $36. His duties were unchanged: collecting laundry, cleaning tables, shining shoes, and serving meals to officers, chiefs, and white sailors, everyone but himself. Fellow mess attendants, all black sailors, lived in segregation, with separate berths, facilities, and dining, everything separate, save for their shared workplace. They served on the same ship, wore the same uniform, mostly, but occupied different ratings, had different skin colors, and endured different realities. Miller accepted his situation without public complaint, working hard, diligently, and professionally. He also excelled in boxing, becoming the ship's heavyweight champion and competing in fleet-wide boxing tournaments. Miller was powerful, fast, aggressive, and technically skilled, winning frequently. This earned him respect among his shipmates, who appreciated his physical prowess in the ring, a profound contrast to his laundry duties or serving food. It was a real skill, earning real respect and recognition. Life settled into a routine through 1940 and 1941, marked by training, operations, exercises, and annual fleet problems. The Pacific Fleet was preparing for a war whose timing was unknown but seemed inevitable. Tensions with Japan were escalating. Having invaded China in 1937 and occupied French Indochina in 1940, Japan threatened American territory in the Philippines. The United States responded with embargoes on oil, steel, and scrap metal, resources Japan desperately needed and was entirely dependent upon. These embargoes were crippling, economically strangling Japan, which faced a choice: withdraw from China and Indochina, an unthinkable act of dishonor contrary to Bushido principles, or go to war. Both sides knew war was inevitable, preparing for an unknown when, where, and how, but certain it was coming soon. Sailors sensed the tension. Exercises increased in intensity, frequency, and seriousness. Everything was on a war footing. Almost, but not quite. Close. Very close. December 1941. War was imminent, days, hours away, though no one knew for certain. On December 7th, everything changed forever. December 6th, 1941, a Saturday evening, was routine. Some sailors enjoyed liberty ashore in Honolulu: recreation, drinking, entertainment, women, gambling. Others remained aboard, attending to ship duties, cleaning, maintenance, sleeping, relaxing, reading, or writing letters home to family, girlfriends, and wives. It was a normal Saturday night. The fleet was moored at Battleship Row on Ford Island in Pearl Harbor. All 8 battleships, California, Maryland, Oklahoma, Tennessee, West Virginia, Arizona, Nevada, Pennsylvania, were present. The West Virginia was at berth F6, outboard of the Tennessee, which was inboard. Ford Island lay to the starboard of the Tennessee, while the West Virginia was to port with open water beyond. 40 feet of water beneath the keel, in the shallow, protected, and supposedly safe harbor. This strategic anchorage for forward deployment meant the fleet was ready. Everything was normal, peaceful, calm. It was the last peace for a long time. On December 7th, 1941, Sunday morning, at 7:55 a.m., the first wave of the Japanese attack began. 6 aircraft carriers of the Japanese Navy's Kido Butai Task Force, Akagi, Kaga, Soryu, Hiryu, Shokaku, and Zuikaku, launched a massive, coordinated, and utterly surprising strike. The attack was devastating. The first wave comprised 183 aircraft, torpedo bombers, dive bombers, level bombers, and Zero fighters, all professionally coordinated. Their primary targets were the battleships. Fortunately, the U.S. aircraft carriers, Enterprise, Lexington, and Saratoga, were absent, deployed elsewhere, and thus spared. Unfortunately, the available Japanese battleships, positioned, moored, and vulnerable, became perfect targets. Below deck, Miller was collecting laundry on the third deck, a routine Sunday morning duty. Suddenly, a tremendous explosion violently shook the ship. It shuddered, lurched, and listed to port as immediate flooding commenced. A torpedo had struck the port side forward below the waterline, creating a massive hole. Water rushed in by the ton, flooding compartments and causing bulkheads to fail, leading to unstoppable progressive flooding. Then, another torpedo impacted the port side amidships, causing more flooding and damage. The ship listed further to port, settling and slowly but surely sinking. Miller reacted instantly, his training, instinct, and duty all activating as battle station's alarms blared, signaling general quarters for all hands. He immediately ascended ladders and companionways through decks shrouded in smoke. Fire, oil, water, and chaos reigned. Men ran, screamed, died, and lay wounded everywhere, amidst blood, bodies, and scattered parts. This was the horror, the reality of war, a first experience for everyone on the ship. His assigned battle station, an anti-aircraft gun at position 3-inch on the port side aft, was gone. It had been destroyed and obliterated by the first torpedo that struck early, killing its crew and leaving nothing behind. Miller was uncertain what to do or where to go. Orders were unclear, communications damaged, officers wounded, dead, or scattered. Chaos was complete and universal. Then, someone, an unknown officer or petty officer, shouted an order. "Help the captain on the bridge, he's wounded!" Miller responded immediately, running forward and up to the bridge, the ship's navigation and command center. This brain of the ship, located high up, was typically exposed and vulnerable, and now it was a death trap. The chaos on the bridge was even worse than below. Captain Mervyn S. Benyon, commanding officer of the West Virginia, was mortally wounded, lying on the deck, his abdomen shredded by shrapnel. A 16-inch armor-piercing bomb, converted from a shell, had struck the adjacent USS Tennessee's turret, and fragments had sprayed across Tennessee's superstructure and West Virginia's bridge, flying hot, deadly, and lethal. Captain Benyon was hit, with a massive abdominal wound and exposed intestines, bleeding profusely, dying slowly and painfully. Yet he was conscious, alert, and commanding, still giving orders and directing the defense of the ship, his men, and everything. Duty, honor, service. Everything trumped self, life, and all else. Miller was ordered to help move the captain to a safer location behind the armored conning tower, not entirely safe, but better protected. Miller and another sailor carefully and gently lifted the captain onto a stretcher and moved him behind the conning tower. Despite the tremendous, excruciating, and mortal wound, Captain Benyon refused to leave his bridge command post. He remained, commanding, directing, and fighting for the ship's defense until the end. Death was minutes away, but not yet. He was still fighting, still commanding, still serving. After moving the captain, Miller received his next orders from a surviving officer, a lieutenant commander or similar figure. Man the portside anti-aircraft guns, the Browning .50 caliber. Load ammunition, fire, engage the Japanese planes, everything flying, kill them. Miller responded, "Sir, I'm not trained in gunnery. I've never operated a machine gun, never trained." The officer retorted, "It doesn't matter. Figure it out. Do it now. Go." Miller went to the portside anti-aircraft position. A Browning M2.50 caliber heavy machine gun stood there. Its specifications outlined its power. Caliber .50 BMG, 12.7 by 99 millimeters, a large and powerful round. The gun alone weighed 84 pounds, 128 pounds with its tripod. Its length was 65 inches with a 45-inch barrel. The cyclic rate was 450 to 600 rounds per minute, with an effective range of 1,800 meters, 6,800 millimeters. The .50 caliber bullet, weighing 661 grains, came in various types: armor-piercing, incendiary, and tracer, fed by 100-round canvas belts with disintegrating links. Its operation, a short recoil gas assist system, was reliable, powerful, deadly, and effective against aircraft, personnel, and armor. The Browning M2, an iconic weapon in American military history, is legendary and still in service today in 2025, 84 years later, a reliable, proven, and effective Ma Deuce. Miller arrived at the position. The gun was unmanned, its crew dead, wounded, scattered, or abandoned. No one was operating it. Ammunition, belts, and boxes were present, ready, and available. The gun itself was ready, operational, and functional. It just needed a gunner. Miller looked at the gun. The controls seemed relatively simple: a trigger at the rear grips, a charging handle on the side, and basic iron sights with adjustable elevation and windage, all mechanical. He had received no training and had never touched a gun like this before, but he had to figure it out. He had no choice. The ship was sinking, planes were attacking, men were dying. He had to fire back, defend, and fight to survive. Everything depended on someone, anyone, everyone fighting. He was one. He grabbed the charging handle, pulled it back, and released it forward. The bolt chambered around, ready. The ammo belt was already loaded by someone earlier. Good. Ready to fire. He gripped the handles with both hands, aimed at the sky, at the Japanese planes. Mitsubishi A6M0 fighters, Nakajima B5 Enkate torpedo bombers, and Aichi D3 A-Val dive bombers. All were present, all attacking, all targets. Miller aimed, trying to lead the fast-moving targets, flying at 200+ miles per hour. Leading required instinct, guessing, hoping, and prayer. He squeezed the trigger at the rear of both handles. The Browning roared, deafeningly. The recoil was tremendous, pounding his shoulder, arms, and body. Everything vibrated, shook, and rattled. Hot, smoking brass ejected to the right, flying away. Links separated and fell as the ammunition belt fed smoothly and reliably. Tracers, every fifth round, arced skyward, a visible stream of fire toward the target planes. He adjusted his aim, left, right, up, down, following the target, leading, compensating for movement, speed, and distance, all instinct, a natural marksman, a boxer, an athlete with fast, accurate, potentially deadly reflexes. Rounds impacted somewhere on a plane, maybe, maybe not. It was hard to tell at such speed. Everything was fast, confusing. Smoke, fire, noise, chaos. But he fired continuously, steadily, professionally. Untrained but capable, a natural fighter, perhaps born of the boxing ring, now in a different ring, a different fight, but with the same spirit, determination, and courage. Official records are unclear regarding confirmed hits or kills. The Navy officially recorded one aircraft destroyed by Doris Miller on December 7, 1941. One verified kill witnessed and recorded. However, Miller himself claimed to have hit perhaps 4 to 6 aircraft, and eyewitnesses from the bridge and nearby deck corroborated seeing planes smoking, trailing fire, and crashing. Whether these were due to Miller's fire or a combination of multiple guns, it was difficult to verify in the chaos of combat, with multiple guns firing at multiple targets. The official conservative count remains 1 confirmed kill. Miller believed he hit more, probably 4 to 6 in total, but the actual number will never be known for certain. The official record stands at 1, but everyone present on December 7th agreed Miller was effective, deadly, and engaged the enemy successfully, professionally, and courageously, everything expected of a sailor in combat, and much more considering his lack of training, experience, or even authorization. But he did it anyway. It was necessary, required, and duty demanded it, and he delivered completely. The duration is unclear, exactly. Minutes felt like hours, probably 15 to 20 minutes total. He fired and engaged aircraft continuously until his ammunition was exhausted. The belts were empty, all gone. He fired hundreds of rounds, maybe 1,000 or more, uncertain, but definitely many. Then, a shouted order. "Abandon ship! All hands abandon ship, now! Go!" The ship was sinking, settled on the bottom of Pearl Harbor in 40 feet of water, shallow enough for the ship to be grounded, but flooding continued, and fire spread. Oil burned on the water's surface surrounding the ship, a deadly trap for men inside, burning, drowning, already dead, or minutes away from death without evacuation. The immediate order was given to abandon ship. Miller looked around. Captain Benyon was dead, finally bled out. He died at his command post on the bridge, his duty honored until the end. A true sailor, a true officer, a true leader, embodying everything the Navy represents. Miller saluted his body, a mental sign of respect, tribute, and honor, then left the bridge. Down ladders onto the main deck, where oil, water, and fire mixed, dangerous and deadly. Men swam, struggled, burned, drowned, and died. Miller helped some, pulling them from the water, from the fire, from death, saving several lives through personal, direct, hands-on rescue. Then, he went over the side himself, into the water, coated in thick oil. Swimming was difficult, breathing hard, oil getting into his lungs, choking, sickening. But he swam away from the ship, toward shore, toward safety, toward life. He reached Ford Island, relatively safe, even as the attack continued. The Japanese second wave of 167 aircraft followed the first, bringing more bombs, more torpedoes, more strafing, more death, more destruction, more of everything. But Miller was safe ashore, alive, having survived the first wave and the attack on the West Virginia. The ship sank, settling slowly. 7 torpedoes in total hit the port side, along with 2 16-inch armor-piercing bombs, converted shells, causing massive damage, flooding, and fire. Catastrophic, but it did not capsize. This was thanks to Lieutenant Claude V. Ricketts, Assistant Fire Control Officer, who ordered counter-flooding in the starboard compartments, intentionally balancing the port flooding and preventing a capsize or rollover like the USS Oklahoma ahead. The Oklahoma, in a similar situation, had been struck by multiple torpedoes, completely capsizing, turning Turtle upside down, trapping hundreds of men inside to drown. The West Virginia avoided this fate thanks to Ricketts' quick and correct decision to counterflood. This saved the ship and spared many lives from immediate and certain death by capsizing. The ship settled to the bottom on an even keel, upright, and flooding eventually stopped. Damage control efforts continued for days after the attack. The fire was fought and eventually extinguished, with flames out by the afternoon of December 8th. The ship was stabilized and secured, severely damaged, but saved and salvageable. Casualties on the USS West Virginia were heavy and severe. 106 killed, according to official count. Some sources cite 130. Discrepancies exist due to immediate aftermath confusion. Regardless, over 100 of the approximately 1,080 crew members were dead, with many more wounded, injured, burned, shocked, and traumatized. Everyone who survived was changed forever by the horror and visceral reality of the war, an unforgettable and permanent experience. Men were also trapped below decks in sealed compartments. Airtight and watertight, these compartments prevented flooding from spreading, but trapped their occupants. Occupants were discovered alive inside. Days after the assault, tapping noises were heard from the bulkheads and hull, conveying Morse code messages. Please help. Rescue, save us, please. Efforts to rescue them were launched, but proved perilous, challenging, and ultimately futile. In some instances, the dangers included flooding, risk of fire, and structural collapse. Most trapped individuals perished. Eventually, oxygen depleted and carbon dioxide accumulated, leading to a slow, excruciating death by suffocation. Days later, the tapping ceased. Silence signified the finality of their demise. During salvage operations in May 1942, after the ship was refloated and pumped dry, an examination of a single compartment revealed 6,670 bodies trapped below. A calendar scratched onto a surface showed the last date as December 23rd, indicating survival for 16 days after the attack, enduring darkness, cold, and suffocation before eventually succumbing. The horror was unimaginable, yet real, documented and verified aboard the USS West Virginia in December 1941. This was a tragedy within a tragedy. Miller initially survived unharmed, though his mental state remained unrevealed, as he never discussed it publicly. He returned to duty aboard the West Virginia during salvage operations, assisting with recovery efforts, cleaning, and repairs. Despite his extraordinary actions on December 7th, his rating remained that of a mess attendant due to unchanged segregation policies, which deemed combat heroism irrelevant for black sailors. However, recognition slowly and begrudgingly began to emerge. In the immediate aftermath of December 7th, Miller's deeds were witnessed by numerous officers and sailors on the bridge deck, leading to testimonies, written reports, and recommendations for an award or medal, which he clearly deserved. Yet, the Navy hesitated to honor a black sailor and mess attendant as a hero, as such a narrative was problematic and undermined the policy of segregation. While official doctrine denied the combat effectiveness of black sailors, the reality of December 7th contradicted these claims, proving the Navy's assertion of black sailors' combat incapability entirely wrong and embarrassingly so. Navy High Command, especially Secretary Frank Knox, vehemently opposed black sailors in any combat role. Knox rejected the congressional recommendations from Michigan and New York, alongside fervent campaigning by the black press to award Miller the Medal of Honor. Despite his actions meeting all criteria for the Medal of Honor, being beyond the call of duty, extraordinary, and courageous, Knox blocked it, demoting the award to the Navy Cross, which was then the third highest naval honor. Later, on August 7, 1942, Congress adjusted the precedents, placing the Navy Cross above the Distinguished Service Medal. While still not the Medal of Honor, it represented significant historic official recognition, making Miller the first African American in World War II to receive the Navy Cross. Between January and March 1942, Miller's identity remained unknown to the public. The press referred to him as an unidentified Negro mess attendant, an unknown sailor, or an anonymous hero. This invisibility was a deliberate Navy policy to suppress his name and recognition, avoiding attention to black heroism, which was deemed a problematic narrative that undermined segregation. However, pressure mounted, particularly from the black press, with the Pittsburgh Courier leading calls for the release of his name and identity. Lawrence Reich, director of Harlem's Schomburg Center for Research in Black Culture, wrote to the Navy requesting his name be made public. The combination of public, political, and media pressure finally led to the Navy's announcement on March 14, 1942, revealing Doris Miller, Mess Attendant 2nd Class, USS West Virginia, as the hero of Pearl Harbor on December 7, 1941. His naming brought official public recognition, making him the first African-American war hero of World War II to be celebrated nationwide. The black community in particular felt immense and justified pride. Miller became a symbol of the capability, courage, and potential of black Americans in military service. Despite segregation, discrimination, and all existing barriers, he proved them capable, effective, heroic, deadly, and professional, demonstrating that black sailors could perform just as well, if not better, than their white counterparts. December 7th irrefutably cemented this fact. On May 27, 1942, a historic public ceremony took place at Pearl Harbor aboard the aircraft carrier USS Enterprise, CV-6, where Admiral Chester W. Nimitz, Commander-in-Chief of the Pacific Fleet, personally presented Miller with the Navy Cross. Nimitz pinned the medal to Miller's chest, congratulated him, and shook his hand, stating, "This marks the first time in this conflict such a high tribute has been made in the Pacific Fleet to a member of his race." He expressed hope that the future will see others similarly honored for brave acts. While these were optimistic and somewhat progressive words, the reality was different, slower, and harder. Policies remained unchanged. Segregation persisted throughout the war. No black soldier, sailor, or Marine received the Medal of Honor between 1941 and 1945, despite countless acts of heroism, valor, and sacrifice that repeatedly met the criteria. This systemic institutional racism, enforced through deliberate policy, was a conscious and real evil. Miller's Navy Cross was the highest award a black sailor received during World War II, a significant achievement, but not enough, not equal, not just, and not fair, reflecting the harsh reality of America's Navy and military in 1942. On June 1, 1942, Miller was promoted to Mess Attendant First Class, MA1, with his monthly pay increasing by approximately $54. This modest recognition for his service and heroism was minimal, yet still a step forward. From December 1941 to November 1942, he served aboard the USS Indianapolis, CA-35, a heavy cruiser, continuing his unmodified duties as a mess attendant. Despite his growing public recognition, his private military life remained unchanged as segregation policies continued to be rigidly enforced. However, his fame grew, and public awareness increased, with the black press prominently championing Miller as a hero and a symbol of what black Americans could achieve in both military and civilian life. The white establishment eventually took notice and responded. In November 1942, his orders changed, detaching him from the Indianapolis for a war bond tour. This temporary assignment for recruiting, public relations, and morale was significant and historic. He became the first African American allowed on a war bond speaking tour, a role previously reserved for white heroes. Miller broke this barrier, traveling across the United States from December 1942 to January 1943. He visited Oakland, California, Waco, Texas, his hometown of Dallas, and the Great Lakes Naval Training Station in Illinois, where he addressed and inspired the first graduating class of black sailors. This was a powerful, symbolic, and meaningful experience for young black men training and serving in the Navy, seeing Miller, a hero wearing the Navy Cross, as proof of what was possible and achievable. In 1943, Miller was featured in a Navy recruiting poster designed by the famous artist David Stone Martin, wearing his Navy Cross, with the caption, "Above and Beyond the Call of Duty." This poster was historic and significant, as the first time an African American was featured in Navy recruiting material. While it was propaganda, it represented crucial recognition, visibility, and representation that had been previously absent or denied. This progress was real and measurable. Miller became a symbol of change and the possibility of a better future, perhaps. Even though policy remained segregated, discriminatory, and unjust, recognition grew, pressure mounted, and change was slowly but inevitably approaching. Miller, an unwitting, modest, and humble catalyst, played an important, historic, and permanent role in this shift. In February 1943, the mess attendant rating was changed to steward's mate. While this new designation meant the same job, duties, restrictions, and discrimination, it was a cosmetic change, minimal but a step in the right direction, albeit slowly and grudgingly. Miller continued to serve quietly, professionally, and modestly. He never sought attention, fame, or special treatment, consistently fulfilling his duty to his country and shipmates. He was a simple, honest, true, professional, dedicated, and humble sailor, always. On May 15, 1943, new orders assigned him to the Puget Sound Navy Yard in Bremerton, Washington, then to the USS Liscombe Bay, CVE-56, an escort carrier of the Casablanca class. This small aircraft carrier had a displacement of 7,800 tons, light, was 512 feet long, 65 feet wide, and had a draft of 22 feet. Armament included one 5-inch/38 gun, 16 40mm Bofors anti-aircraft guns, and 20 20mm Oerlikon anti-aircraft guns. It could carry 28 aircraft, a mix of fighters and torpedo bombers, assigned to Composite Squadron 5 C-39. With a crew of 860 to 960 officers and enlisted personnel, its mission was convoy escort, protecting transports and merchantmen from submarine threats, and providing close air support for amphibious operations by Marines and Army ground forces, as well as ferrying aircraft to fleet bases and other carriers. These support roles were critical, important, and very dangerous. Escort carriers were nicknamed Jeep carriers or baby flat tops, but also Kaiser coffins, an ominous and prophetic nickname. Built quickly and cheaply from prefabricated sections at Kaiser shipyards in Vancouver, Washington, they prioritized quantity over quality and speed over durability, a necessity of wartime production. However, this made them vulnerable, with thin armor, minimal protection, and volatile aviation gasoline, ammunition, bombs, and torpedoes, making them explosive. One hit could be catastrophic. Probable. Miller and everyone aboard the Liscombe Bay would soon discover this reality. Tragedy would strike in November 1943. On June 1, 1943, Miller was promoted to Cook Third Class, CK3. This rating change meant that, after 4 years of service, he was finally promoted out of the mess attendant/steward's mate category into a cook rating, still mess-related but a different technical specialty in galley operations. This was a form of recognition for his service, performance, and heroism, modest but real progress. Miller continued serving professionally, quietly, and modestly, as always. The Liscombe Bay was commissioned on August 7, 1943, under the command of Captain Irving Day Wiltse, an experienced, professional, and capable officer. Wiltse, a former navigator of the USS Yorktown, CV-5, during the Battle of Midway in June 1942, survived that battle, although his carrier was sunk. An experienced combat veteran and capable commander, he oversaw the training of the new ship and crew throughout September and October 1943. The vessel underwent standard procedures, including shakedown tests, rigorous training, and sea trials, performing operations between the coasts of San Diego and San Francisco, typical for naval activities. By October 11, 1943, this new ship, with its novice crew, was assigned as the flagship for Carrier Division 24 under the command of Rear Admiral Henry M. Molyneux. He was an experienced, professional, and highly capable officer, entrusted with the significant responsibility of coordinating multiple carriers for strategic and tactical operations. His presence, along with his staff, elevated the ship's importance and the criticality of its mission. Landing in Pearl Harbor, Hawaii on October 27, 1943, the crew continued their training with fleet exercises in Hawaiian waters in preparation for the imminent combat operations. November 1943 marked the Operation Galvanic, the invasion of the Gilbert Islands, with Macon and Tarawa atolls being strategically vital targets. This marked the first significant American offensive in the Central Pacific, and fanatical Japanese defenses were expected, portending high casualties on both sides. The stakes were immense, influencing strategic momentum and psychological warfare. On November 10, 1943, Task Force 52, the Northern Attack Force, led by Rear Admiral Richmond K. Turner, departed Pearl Harbor, aiming for Macon Atoll. The assault force consisted of the Army's 165th Regimental Combat Team, 27th Infantry Division, supported by coordinated naval gunfire and carrier aircraft. Every aspect of this combined operation, including close air support from the ship's fighters, bombers, and torpedo planes, was meticulously planned and professional. For the crew, including Miller, this mission represented the culmination of their training, their first real combat experience, where the deadly outcome for some, or many, was an unknown but inevitable certainty. On November 20, 1943, the assault on Makin Atoll began. Army troops stormed the beaches, facing a moderate Japanese resistance compared to the nearby Tarawa, which soon became a horrific bloodbath for the Marines, incurring massive casualties. Makin, while less severe, still saw fierce, brutal hand-to-hand combat. The ship continuously launched aircraft sorties, providing essential bombing and strafing support for ground troops. These effective and professional efforts helped secure Makin by November 23, concluding continuous, successful operations. This victory marked America's first major success in the Central Pacific Campaign, signaling the beginning of the island-hopping strategy toward Tokyo. The ship contributed significantly, with Composite Squadron 39 completing 2,278 successful combat sorties. Though the mission was accomplished, the cost was about to become tragically high. At 5:10 a.m. local time, on November 24, 1943, in the pre-dawn darkness, the ship was steaming 20 miles southwest of Butaratari Island in Makin Atoll. It was part of a task group with destroyers, escorts, carriers, and battleships, all coordinated in a standard protective screen. Moving at a moderate speed of 15 knots, its course was steady, and the routine morning watch was underway. Pilots were preparing for the day's first launch, with aircraft on deck, engines starting, and munitions loaded just minutes from launch. Then, a lookout's shout. "Torpedo! Water! Starboard!" The warning came too late. Reaction was impossible, with only seconds to spare. A Japanese Type 95 Long Lance naval torpedo, a modern and deadly weapon, 600 millimeters in diameter, 9 meters long, weighing 2,700 kilograms, carrying a 550-kilogram high-explosive warhead, traveling at 48 knots with a range of 15,000 yards, was inbound. Launched by the Japanese submarine I-175, commanded by Lieutenant Commander Tsunami Tabata, a skilled and patient professional who had stalked the task group for hours, it struck the ship's starboard side at approximately 5:13 a.m. The hit was in the worst possible location, near the bomb magazine and aviation ordnance storage, making it absolutely catastrophic. The torpedo detonated its 550-kilogram warhead, creating a tremendous blast. A massive hole was torn in the hull, and water immediately began flooding in. But far worse, the bomb magazine ignited, leading to a massive, enormous, and devastating secondary explosion. The destruction was total, visible for miles. A mushroom cloud of fire, smoke, and debris, including shrapnel, soared skyward. Debris rained down 5,000 yards away, hitting nearby ships like the USS New Mexico, BB-40. Fragments of metal and even human remains fell, creating an unimaginable and horrifying scene. The ship was shattered, its stern sheared off, structure collapsed, and flight deck buckled and twisted. Fire raged everywhere, and black, toxic smoke billowed. Hundreds of men were killed instantly below decks in engine rooms, magazines, and quarters by the blast, shrapnel, and fire. A mercifully quick death for many. Others were wounded, burned, trapped, drowning, or dying slowly and agonizingly, screaming for help that no one could provide amidst the complete chaos. The ship immediately listed heavily to starboard as severe, uncontrolled, and unstoppable flooding progressed, with bulkheads failing sequentially. Sinking was inevitable, swift, and complete. In just 23 minutes from the explosion, the ship was gone. This marked the fastest carrier sinking in American history and the deadliest in terms of percentage of crew lost, with 70%, the highest for any American carrier in World War II, and indeed all carriers in all wars. Miller's exact location at the time remained unknown. He was likely either in the galley, where he was a cook third class preparing breakfast, or in the berthing area, sleeping off a watch. Both locations were below decks, death traps under the circumstances. The explosion likely killed him instantly, a quick, painless, and merciful end, undoubtedly better than slow drowning, burning, or being trapped. His body was never recovered or identified, and he was listed as missing in action, presumed dead, lost at sea, with his remains entombed permanently within the ship at the bottom of the Pacific Ocean, approximately 3,000 feet deep, 20 miles southeast of Makin Atoll in the Gilbert Islands. There he rests forever with 646 shipmates, all lost together in their final duty. The 272 survivors were rescued by destroyers Morris, Hughes, Hull, and McKissick, among others from the task group, which immediately responded despite the continued threat of the submarine. Rescue operations commenced with high priority. Men in the water grappled with thick oil, burning areas, wounds, hypothermia, and universal shock. The difficult and dangerous rescue efforts lasted for hours, concluding around 8 a.m. Many rescued men later succumbed to their wounds, burns, and shock. The final count was 702 dead, including Rear Admiral Henry M. Molyneux, commander of Carrier Division 24, and Captain Irving D. Wiltse, the commanding officer of the ship. Both were killed instantly in the explosion. Also among the lost was Doris Miller, the cook 3rd class, recipient of the Navy Cross for his valor at Pearl Harbor on December 7, 1941. The survivor was now dead, lost on November 24, 1943. Almost exactly 2 years after his heroic actions, his final service and sacrifice complete. On December 7, 1943, the second anniversary of the Pearl Harbor attack, Doris Miller's parents, Connery and Henrietta Miller, in Waco, Texas, received a telegram from the Navy Department. It regretfully informed them that their son, Doris Miller, cook 3rd class, was missing in action, presumed dead after the ship was sunk by enemy action in the Gilbert Islands on November 24, 1943. The timing was cruel, a tragic irony that caused immeasurable pain. His parents were devastated. Their son, a hero, a Pearl Harbor survivor, honored and celebrated, was gone at 24 years old, too young. His life unfinished, his potential unrealized, his future stolen, a stark reminder that war eventually claims everyone, even heroes, even survivors, even Miller. Though gone forever, he was not forgotten. His legacy remained permanent, important, historic, and significant. Posthumous recognition continued. In February 1944, Doris Miller was awarded the Purple Heart for being killed in action during enemy combat on November 24, 1943. While deserved, it offered little comfort to his grieving family, who had lost their son. The USS Miller, DE-1091, a Knox-class destroyer escort commissioned on June 30, 1973, was named in his honor, marking the third naval vessel named after an African American. This was a historic and significant recognition of his service, sacrifice, and heroism. Various buildings and facilities at naval bases, such as barracks and dining halls, were also named after Miller, further cementing his legacy. In 2010, the United States Postal Service issued a commemorative stamp of Doris Miller as part of its Distinguished Sailors series, bringing national visibility and permanent honor. On December 7, 2017, a 9-foot-tall, 700-pound bronze statue of Miller was unveiled on the banks of the Brazos River in downtown Waco, Texas, depicting him in his Navy uniform, wearing his Navy Cross Medal, in a powerful, heroic pose. It stands as a tribute to the hometown hero, son of Waco, native Texan, and American hero to all. The community's pride was enormous, justified, and well-deserved, establishing a permanent, visible, and publicly accessible memorial to ensure his remembrance, honor, and celebration. His legacy remains preserved and permanent. On January 20, 2020, the U.S. Navy announced that CVN-81, the fourth ship in the Gerald R. Ford-class aircraft carrier line, would be named in his honor. The USS Doris Miller, CVN-81, slated for commissioning in 2032, represents the paramount accolade a U.S. sailor can receive, an aircraft carrier bearing their name, the Navy's ultimate recognition. This honor ensures an enduring legacy and perpetual remembrance. It marks a historic, albeit long overdue, milestone as the first aircraft carrier christened for an African-American sailor, a fitting tribute to deserved recognition. Miller's heroism on December 7, 1941, was formally acknowledged on November 24, 1943, and the announcement in 2022 solidifies a legacy that will finally be realized in 2032, both complete and eternal. Doris Miller's narrative extends beyond his individual, undeniably extraordinary heroism. It serves as a powerful symbol, embodying the broader service of African Americans in the military. During World War II, despite confronting segregation and discrimination, facing limitations and restrictions, they consistently proved themselves capable, effective, heroic, and professional, demonstrating equality in every respect to their white counterparts in the Navy, Army, and Marine Corps. Miller was the first, most prominent, and most celebrated among them. Yet he was not alone. Thousands of black service members in World War II served with honor, capability, and heroism. Despite policies of segregation that hindered their full participation, recognition, and equality, they persevered, contributed, and sacrificed. Miller, therefore, symbolizes all African American military service members, not just in World War II, but also in subsequent conflicts like Korea and Vietnam. His legacy is permanent, significant, historical, necessary, and deserving of eternal remembrance. If this story resonated with you, please press the like button. These heroes merit being remembered. Subscribe for authentic American history. Share your thoughts in the comments below. Were you familiar with Doris Miller, the Pearl Harbor hero who earned the Navy Cross? We'd love to know. Thank you for watching. Doris Miller, a hero, sailor, and American mess attendant, transformed into a warrior on December 7, 1941, at Pearl Harbor. Without formal training, he manned guns against Japanese aircraft, saving lives and earning the Navy Cross, the first African American in World War II to do so. His actions epitomized courage, capability, and equality. He continued his service quietly, professionally, and humbly aboard the USS Liscum Bay, where he was lost at sea on November 24, 1943, at the age of 24. He will be remembered forever and honored always. The USS Doris Miller, CVN 81, is coming in 2032, ensuring his legacy is permanent, eternal, and complete. Rest in peace, hero, sailor, American, forever.